Well, hi everyone. I'm John Redland, back with another double review of two more Netflix originals, two foreign movies that I just saw. Rising High, a German film that was not very good at all, in fact, almost bored me to sleep. And the other is a hilarious Indian slasher movie, I guess, called Mrs. Serial Killer. Like any multi-movie review that I do, there's going to be spoilers throughout all of these, so yeah, Rising High. Okay, take one part Catch Me If You Can, one part Blow, literally, because there's quite a bit of drug use in this movie, and then just add some German actors that really seem to be going through the motions and take all the emotion and anything good out of those first two movies that I mentioned, and you have Rising High. Rising High essentially focuses around a man named Victor who gets with a guy named Jerry, and not like that, but I'm not here to shame, and they end up coming up with a scheme to fleece people out of a whole bunch of money by buying properties low, selling them high, and everything, and getting rich. It's a get-rich-quick pyramid scheme. Except they don't put enough money aside for taxes and they blow it on blackjack, hookers, and drugs. Okay, maybe just hookers and drugs, but still, blackjack would have been actually hilarious because then Bender would have been involved. All right, Victor also meets a woman named Nikki and they have a kid. And yeah, this is where every cliche possible just gets thrown into a freaking blender and it's really goddamn boring because there's like no energy to this. This is despite the fact they have a bunch of synth techno music and a whole bunch of stuff like for music montage scenes, and you get to see German people living it up. The problem with this movie is it just isn't interesting at all, and it's so goddamn cliche. And even though Victor, helps his dad get a car after, his dad had kind of, had some poor times in his life because of a divorce and because of a bunch of other things, everything comes crashing down. It hurts inside. No, Hulk Hogan is not involved, and Victor loses everything. All this is told during police investigation scenes and interrogation scenes, and he's in jail for a while. Doesn't get to see his daughter start to grow up, and he's obviously estranged from his wife. And he gets out of jail. Instead of doing the smart thing and becoming a functional member of society and living legally, nope, he decides to go right back in to doing auction work, which is how he got started. By doing that kind of stuff to buy property cheap and everything. So he doesn't learn anything despite the fact his entire life fell apart and his dad died in a driving accident. Yeah, all this stuff is happening and it's so cliche and deadpan and not even fun. And I mean, I'm not saying you need to make a movie completely comical, but if you're going to be this cliche, you might as well have a whole lot of fun with it. Rising High obviously gets an F. It's not very good at all. It's just so cliche. The acting isn't even bad. It's just so aggressively boring. Now let's move on to something that is less boring. That is Mrs. Serial Killer. Okay, so it's an Indian slasher movie where a wife and doctor find out that they are expecting a kid. Everything's going good. He's on this video call, all this stuff and everything. Okay, it's all good. And then there's an ex-boyfriend that's a cop of the wife, obviously. And he steals a whole bunch of stuff from the house when he comes to, just visit her. What the hell's going on? Suddenly we cut to this scene of a bunch of bodies, a bunch of, that were pregnant women, and their fetuses are found as trophies in this, in the basement of this house that's a property owned by the doctor, or in the doctor's name. He didn't know why it was there. He didn't know how those bodies got there. It wasn't even me, it was Owen, and if you get that, I give you credit there. Unfortunately, this kind of reminded me, and I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, but it reminded me of that Simpsons episode where Homer saw some Bollywood movie and it made no sense. It was like this action movie, and they broke out in a dance routine all of a sudden. Something got lost in translation here. I'm sure this movie is probably terrifying for Indian audiences, or at least some. But what I just couldn't get over is just the silly plot, the completely ridiculous music. And the music wasn't even bad it wasn't even badly made. It was just badly placed. Like, none of it was any good at all. So the doctor gets jailed. The wife suspects that, that her ex-boyfriend framed her husband. So she goes on to try and figure out what the hell's going on. Like, what in the world? Why would somebody do this? And she finds out from her husband that there's this lawyer that owes him a debt. And even though he is bedridden because of an illness, he decides to take the case, gets his team on it, even does a freaking trial by tablet, which is apparently something you can do. I'm not even kidding. Somebody from his team holds up a tablet of him bedridden, saying to the judge, "Hey, we are asking for leniency. We're soon going to get Law and Order Tablet Edition unit," which I actually would kind of laugh at. Tablet unit, TU. I wonder what else we could call it. This is the stuff I was thinking about while watching this. Here's where it got hilarious. One, the bad music. Two, the acting wasn't all that good either. Everybody's chewing up the scenery. The doctor is so obviously, clearly, ass-wipingly evil that there's no way that it could be anybody else, and the wife still somehow manages to get him sprung. Now, how does she do that? The lawyer tells her, hey, if you make it seem like the killings are continuing, then we can prove that he didn't do these killings and get him off on a technicality, or at least get him bailed out, or at least get some leniency. So what does she do? Instead of saying, no, maybe I could come up with some more evidence and, a way to prove that my ex-boyfriend did this, no, she decides to go out and, kidnap somebody who happens to be pregnant and then take care of kill the same way, and then that proves that, oh my God, the killings are still continuing, and her husband couldn't have possibly done this. So, does she kidnap any rando that could, be pregnant? Nope. She kidnaps a former student of hers, a student that is taking Taekwondo. This is, prevalent, for a little bit later, and very relevant for a little bit later in the movie, because she tries to kidnap her, and, with some weird disguise and everything, and then this student, or this former student, actually tries to fight her, and we get this weird, long, drawn-out chase scene in this alley in a completely different city, in a completely different movie. It is absolutely hilarious, because she's like, oh, I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. And then what happens? They get to this weird field that just happens to be right outside the shot that they're in, these weird flowers and everything. And she keeps blowing pollen in this former student's face, and knocking her out eventually somehow. So she kidnaps her. She comes up with a bunch of but she's all in disguise, so she doesn't know that she's her former teacher, or ma'am as she calls her. I also didn't bother to commit any of the character names to memory. I think the main character's name was Shona, or Sona. I think it was Shona. Somas. Actually, this movie probably could have done. No, actually, it shouldn't have done with that. The previous movie had a whole bunch of Somas done. So we get that scene, and then we get where she's got these, these audio clips, like distorted audio clips of her, since the victim, the soon-to-be victim is blindfolded. She just does it where, like, okay, the killer's telling her a whole bunch of stuff. Turns out she doesn't want to do it. She's talking to lawyers saying, what if I release her and basically say, as the killer, that she just has to tell everybody that the killer's still on the loose? Will that work? Yeah, but it probably won't work. Maybe you need to kill her anyway. This woman has no way to think for herself, apparently, and then what ends up happening is, it gets even more hilarious. Because then the student is hiding up, frees herself, hiding up Spider-Man style, and attacks her. And wait a second, she figures out it's her. Oh no, she's still kidnapped. She's trapped. And what the hell's going on? The husband suddenly gets freed, because it turns out that, all this stuff turned out to be bullshit and everything, and this guy suddenly that was bedridden is there in a wheelchair, except he's not actually bedridden and everything. I would say it's really complicated, but I'm making this movie more complicated than it needs to be. It's all a ruse, because the husband is actually doing the killing. He's a gynecologist that doesn't play by the rules, but he gets deadly results. That's essentially what this movie is. And then you get a subplot with the soon-to-be ex-boyfriend of the soon-to-be victim being brought in and everything. He's just brought in for a little bit because he's trying to save his soon-to-be giving birth girlfriend, even though she's like a number of months away. And the guy playing the doctor, just chews up the goddamn scenery, because he reveals that that's who he is, that he's this killer, that he's been this vicious killer for a while, and that it's all a ruse, and he did all this. He tells his grand master plan, and then he gets stabbed, and then he gets seemingly killed. His body gets taken to the hospital, everybody gets taken to the hospital, and the wife also happened to be pregnant and gets stabbed at one point, so she loses that baby, but she can still have kids, and it turns out that this ex-boyfriend was just looking out for her best interests, because her husband was a killer. And then of course, the most cliche of everything, the charges don't get put against her, because the student says, oh no, you tried to kidnap me, but it's okay, because it turns out you were just trying to save me because me and my boyfriend got back together. That's seriously something that happens at the end. And then, the most hilarious thing, the husband, despite being stabbed repeatedly with a scalpel in the back and everything, and seemingly, dead, nope, he's fine, he's in a wheelchair. The lawyer's wife, very beautiful woman, by the way, gets the guy out of the hospital in a wheelchair, and I guess this is some kind of crazy thing that people just do over there, or just do anywhere, and I guess maybe it's not even a cultural thing. Does anybody just get freed after getting stabbed repeatedly with a scalpel? Is that just something that happens? Why in the world was this? Why did this movie happen? It's absolutely hilarious because it's just so bonkers and stupid how they try to make anything dramatic, and it just ended up being absolutely hilarious. I mean, the flower field pollen thing and the taekwondo fight and everything. It was just so hilarious. This movie's hilarious. It's an F. It's fucking rotten, but it's an F. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.